One more time. Hi, I'm Keith Allison. Yes.
All right, I'd like to welcome to the MonkeesPad Git-tar Keith Allison, a legendary musician and songwriter. He's been in the music business since the 50s, and he's been associated with such groups as Paul Revere and the Raiders and Tommy Rowe and the Monkees, Jones, Boyce Hart, Ringo Starr, Johnny Rivers. The list goes on and on. He's had an amazing career, and he's got a lot of great stories. Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Good morning, Joe. How are you today?
I'm great. It's good to see you. Keith and I are old friends. We've known each other for about 30 years. We met in New York, and we've kept a relationship and friendship over the years. And it's just, I'm finally glad to get you on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Let's start by saying, you're a Texas boy. How did you wind up in California in the music business, coming from Texas?
Well, I had a band in high school, and when you start playing and so forth in junior high, and then by high school I had a band and won talent shows, and I built a name for myself in San Antonio. There was a couple of Doug Somm, who later became the Sir Douglas Quintet, and those guys, we were all friends, and so we were all vying for the same jobs. I played clubs and honky tonks and Air Force bases and, everything. And anyway, I did a tour with to back up Ray Peterson, who had the hits Corina, Corina, Tell Laura I Love Her, The Wonder of You. That was in '62. It was in my first year of college. And anyway, he liked me. I got along with him, and I became his guitar player. Went on tour with him all that summer, and came back and tried going back to university. And it was just off and on. I'd go out on the road. I'd come back. I was missing so many classes. So after about 2.5, 3 years of that, he got a new manager in California, and he said, "I'm moving to California. Do you want to come with me?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I withdrew from school, from college, and we moved out here to California in January of '64.
At 21 years of age?
21. Yeah, I was 21. And then we worked every weekend, and there was a lot of music venues out in California back then, and all up and down the coast from Ventura all the way down to San Diego, and man, we played every place there was every weekend. Anyway, so Ray and I was with him almost another year, and then my cousin Jerry Allison with the Crickets, Sonny Curtis, their guitar player, left to go with Roger Miller. So they called me and said, "You want to play guitar with us?" I said, "You kidding me?" I knew every one of the songs, note for note, And so I went to work with the Crickets.
Eventually you wound up on a television show called Where the Action Is with Dick Clark. And that was kind of your entree into the Hollywood scene, wasn't it?
Well, we came in '64. I'd been there for a year and a half and played all over town. And so I was already immersed in, quote, the Hollywood scene, but into the real big time as a solo person, yes, Where the Action Is was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You knew Michael Nesmith in Texas, right?
Yeah, we went to college together in San Antonio.
So let's talk about how your early relationship with Michael started.
I had a music class in the auditorium, and when I was finished, I'd be walking down this causeway, and this guy would be sitting underneath the big oak tree with a guitar with about 4 or 5 long-haired folks saying they're looking girls at his feet, and he's sitting there with a guitar playing. I finally asked somebody, I said, "Who is that guy? He's out there every day, and there's always a bunch of chicks around him, And they said, "Oh, it's Michael Nesmith's his name," but I didn't. So anyway, I went over one day and listened to him, and we started talking, and we became friends, and so we'd see each other at school. Then he had a bass player named John Keeney, who changed his name to John London. And they did they did a folk set, and they played folk clubs, and they did kind of like a Smothers Brothers bit. John Keeney played the dumb guy, and Michael was the straight man, kind of. They'd do some comedy, in their show and sang songs, and Michael was writing and so forth. Anyway, so that's how I first met him. And then I moved out here with Ray, like I said, in January of 64. And around end of May or something, I got a call from Nesmith. And he says, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I've gotten married. My wife is pregnant. And I said, well, come on, So he stayed with me for a couple of weeks till they found a place over in North Hollywood. So we go back that far, we hung out together, and both of us were struggling along, and he got the gig at the Troubadour on Hoot Night on Monday night, and I was the MC, and I was playing with either Ray and then with the Crickets, and so and playing clubs around town. So that's where we first met, and then I got Where the Action Is, and I was on that. Almost a year before the Monkees came out, I remember when he was cast on it and all of that, and they worked for, oh my God, 8 months, 9-10 months, rehearsals every day, taking acting lessons and all that. They were signed and drawing a salary, but the show didn't go on the air till, I don't know, end of September in 66, I believe.
It was a pretty extrovert thing to be a Monkee. He seemed a little taciturn and withdrawn, a character. How did that reconcile, do you think?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons he was cast, because Mickey and Peter and Davey all did their things, and so they were looking for people with different personalities. And then when they were doing their things together, they all meld together, but they were individual people. And so that's what the whole crux of the show was, is 4 very different people put together in a house and playing music together. Michael pretty much played himself, He has a really good mind. And he's good at wisecracking and coming up with ideas. And we used to laugh and joke. And one of my favorite memories is the time, none of us had any money, of course, and Michael and his wife Phyllis and Judith Allison and I, and maybe a couple of other friends, would get together, and we would put together, I don't know, maybe $5-6. That would be on the high end of it, and go to the store and buy a couple of pounds of spaghetti. Judy would make a marinara sauce. We were lucky if we could put a pound of hamburger meat in it, to make it kind of a semi-bolognese. And then, the food everything was a lot cheaper back then, but of course, the pay grade was much smaller too, So we'd buy a great big bottle of that cheap Gallo wine, one of those tubs, big old glass bottle. And we would make garlic bread and the pasta and that salad. And it would feed about 8 people, in our living room over on Highland. I lived right down the street from the Hollywood Bowl. And those were some of my favorite memories back then. I just reminded him of that not too long ago. I said, you remember those great spaghetti dinners we used to, because none of us had any money, And that's the way times were. It was hand to mouth at all times for all of us,
How did you guys eventually connect musically? How did you connect musically with Michael?
Well, we on those dinner nights and everything, he would bring his guitar and we'd sit and play for hours in my living room, you know, sing and play old country songs and whatever he had played, maybe something he was working on. I'd play something I was writing, but mainly we played songs that we knew, and bits of them from home, from off the radio. Whatever was happening, and talk about music. And I mean, so we played together quite a bit then, especially at the spaghetti dinners. And but he was a prolific writer. He was much more into writing than I was. To me, writing was like doing homework. I didn't want to have to I didn't want to have to do any more homework.
What were some of the first songs that you remember him writing?
He got signed with Frankie Lane, the great old singer from years ago that used to do all the movie theme songs, and he was cataloging his publishing company, and then he was working in the office cataloging tapes and so forth in the shelves. And he was encouraged to write, and he got signed to Coal Gems Music, and he changed his name to Michael Blessing. And he put out a couple of records in Coal Gems as Michael Blessing. This is pre-Monkees, and playing the troubadour. And he was after it then, working his way up.
And what was Phyllis's role in the whole situation at that point?
Phyllis Nesmith?
Yeah.
Well, she had Christian to take care of, the baby. And then not too long after that, it was a couple of years later, they had another child and another child. They had 3 children. She was, a very mellow person and artistic and very bright, very bright. And so my wife and his wife got along great. And, they used to sit and talk women's stuff, and we'd be in the other room with our guitars telling each other how great we're going to be one day. That's not true. We never said that. But
no,
I'm
sure
in the back of our mind, we'd hope we got a little further down the road than we were, And
what was your entree to the other members of the Monkees? Do you recall first meeting them?
I had seen Mickey had a band here in town. I knew him, of course, from Circus Boy, the TV show that he was on when he was a child. And, so the first time I saw him at a club, I recognized him. I said, oh, man, it's that kid from Circus Boy grown up. And he had a group called Mickey and the
One-Nighters, I think.
Mickey and the something. He was struggling around town. He was trying to get that off the ground. And I don't know if he was going on interviews for acting jobs or not, But I saw him at several clubs, so I was acquainted with him. Peter, I met through, Michael had a house right down the street from me off of Highland by the Hollywood Bowl. Peter Tark lived there, and so did Mickey. And when I came out here in January, and then when the school was out, college was out, Michael, of course, had arrived with Phyllis, and all these Texans came from San Antonio. We knew all of them. A lot of them became, affiliated with the Monkees when they took off. And they moved in the same building I was in on Sycamore. Of course, it was like 5 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment. That place, what a pigsty. And they took jobs on Hollywood Boulevard at little cafes and so forth, cooking and so forth. And they were spending the summer in Hollywood. And some of them stayed on, like David Pearl and so forth, and made his way. And like I said, they were signed to the project and working on it for a long time before it went on the air. And they worked with him to get that camaraderie together that they did, so it was a learned experience, to become like the Marx Brothers, that's what they were looking for.
What about David?
Beginning of where the action is, we were shooting out in a brand new mall in Northridge. And we were there, and I was getting ready to do a number, and And this young guy and his manager came over and said, "Hi, this is Davy Jones." I said, "Oh, hi, Davy Jones." And then I was told he had just closed in New York. They had been on Oliver. He came as watching, and he watched me do whatever song I sang and so forth. And we talked and introduced. And then the next time I saw him, he was booked on the show, and he had a record out under the name Davy Jones. And of course, I'd met him, so I wanted to talk to him, and we conversed, and I became friends with him back then, before the Monkees.
So how did you get involved with playing on their sessions?
Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart had become songwriting partners, and I did their demos. Boyce and Hart paid $10 a song, and it helped pay my rent and put food on the table, and so I was doing nearly all the Boyce and Hart demo sessions. You know, they were pretty prolific writers, and sometimes we'd do 2, 3. Well, a lot of the songs that I cut the demos that I'm playing guitar and singing, either background or whatever on, were songs that became Monkee hits. Stepping Stone, that's my guitar riff. Tommy said to me, he said, "I want something like the Rolling Stones." You know, he said, "I would play a guitar riff like the Rolling Stones," he said. And at the time, this could be the last time it just come out, the and so thus, you know, like Keith Richards and everybody else has always said, you know, we always take a bit here and take a bit there, you know, and that's the way music is. You take a bit, it all kind of gathers in here, and it comes out a different song, but it's all from past experience, you know, every bit of it. There's nothing new under the sun, really. So I'm playing on Words. I'm playing on a bunch of other stuff. I played on D.W. Washburn. I played on the demo of Where the Action Is, the Freddie Cannon version. "Oh, baby, come on." You know, that's my guitar part on that.
What are your recollections of the period where the Monkees started breaking rank with Kirshner and wanted to produce their own music? Do you remember that happening?
Yeah, I thought it was a mistake myself. You know, it's like killing the goose that lays the golden egg. I mean, they're having hit after hit, and they got this supply of songs from the best writers in the country, you know? So why not go a little longer? And then if it's so important to you to write your own songs and play on your own dates, and then so be it, go ahead, you know? But when they did Headquarters, I thought it was a little early.
So when the Monkees' success skyrocketed, what were some of your observances? What was that period like, witnessing all that happen?
Well, when you're doing television, you're going to the studio every day, or you're going to a location like Action was. So you're working, and you don't really have a concept of the media, of television, and how popular you actually are to the public. There's a great story. My wife, Judith Allison, so it was December. Everybody was Christmas shopping. So Judy's walking down the mall, and bursting out of the doors of Bullock's is Mickey Dolenz running, and behind him, there must be 100 girls shrieking. And some of the sales girls, you know, from the perfume counters. She's standing in front of a restaurant called the Jolly Roger. She's about to have lunch. She's been shopping, going to have lunch. And she sees Mickey running through the mall with all these screaming girls behind him like that. And so she stepped out and yelled, "Mickey!" And he looked at her. She said, "Come here, come here." And so she grabbed him and took him in to the restaurant, and got a booth with his back, you know, where no one could see him. And of course, the restaurant wouldn't let all those girls in there. They didn't have a reservation. So, and he said, "I was just trying to go Christmas shopping, you know, and I got mine." it was like the first time he really got mobbed. He was just out trying to do a common thing like Christmas shopping. And I mean, the staff at the store, the girls from the perfume counters, all these teenage girls and young women, you know, were shrieking and chasing him down through the mall. So it was an odd thing, you know, when you're on television and you really don't have a clue how popular you are till you go out of town and step on stage someplace and then go, whoa, you know.
Losing my light here. Whoa, what the hell happened? My light went out. All right, I'm going to have to use you more because I look like Frankenstein now.
Frankenstein?
Yeah, yeah, right. At the time, the Monkees were getting a lot of criticism that they didn't play the instruments on their own records and all that nonsense. What do you recall that period?
I recall So What, you know? The Beach Boys didn't play on their records. Gary Lewis and the Playboys didn't play on their records. It was all done by studio musicians. They sang on everything. It's the Monkees singing. It's not like they're just imitating someone else singing. They sang on all of that. You know, same as the Beach Boys. Well, why would you muddle through something when you can get the unbelievable players that play on all the big hit records, you know?
Tell me about the song Auntie's Municipal Court that you played on.
They were doing, working on songs for the soundtrack of Head, their movie. And he was cutting some other stuff too. So he called me and he had his group of regulars around, a guy named Eddie Ho, and I think Bill Chadwick was there. And we were at RCA in the same studio where most of the big Monkee hits had been cut. We had done Circle Sky, is it?
Yeah, that was one.
He had a fragment of something, you know, and he said, I never have finished this, just this fragment I have. And I said, let's finish it. And as we started it, the whole thing just came into my head with these two guitar parts that were interlocked, you know, with different tunings. And I said, you play this and you play that, then da-da-da-da, and then started off with the one guitar, then I overdubbed the lower guitar on it afterwards, after we finished the track. And then we broke for lunch. I was sometime in the afternoon, and I went to Martoni's, which is a music hangout in an Italian restaurant on Cahuenga there. We were downtown Hollywood, and I came back, and Michael had already, he wrote all the lyrics. I didn't write one line in that. I'm responsible for the music. So that's how it came about. And then as soon as he finished, he was running through it. He said, we got to get Mickey down here. So he ran in the control room. And he called Mickey, and so Mickey, it took him an hour or so, hour and a half to get down from wherever he was. And they started putting Mickey's vocal on.
And what about Lester Sill? You had to have a meeting with him about the publishing on that track?
The secretary called, said, Keith, you need to come into the office and sign this contract for this song for Auntie's Municipal Court. I said, oh, okay. I said, I'll be there in about 45 minutes. And so I drove into town and I went upstairs and she said, go right in. Lester's waiting for you. So I went in and he said, I need you to sign these contracts. And so he handed me the contract and I took a pen and I looked down and I'm glancing down, I'm reading everything. And because you learn how to read a contract pretty fast if you survive in this business, you know. So the number that jumped out at me, it said Keith Allison 33 1/3, Mike Nesmith, 66 2/3. I said, this isn't right. He said, no. He said, Michael wrote most of it. So I said, this would not exist if I hadn't put, doesn't matter if I only wrote one line. I said, it would not exist in this form. I said, when Mark Lindsay and I write, when I write with anybody, it's 50-50. That's the way it's always been. We always had that up front. Mike and I didn't even discuss it. So Lester says, well, if you got to sign this the way it is. I said, no. He said, well, if you don't sign it, then we're going to pull it off the album. And I said, okay, pull it off the album. I don't care. It's 50-50, or nothing. And so I turned and walked out, and I went back home. About 3 days later, the phone rang. A gal from Screen Gems called, said, Mr. Allison, we need you to come in and sign the contracts for it. I said, you have them in front of you? And she said, yes. I said, what does the percentages read? She said, 50-50. I said, see you in a half hour. So that's it.
Now your name is not on the LP as a songwriter.
Yeah, that was a dig. That they Birds in the Bee, when it first came out, my name was omitted. Now, however, I got paid on every copy sold and on the BMIs and everything. I got paid on all of it, and I can only feel that it was done intentionally by Screen Gems, to get back at me. However, when Andrew Sandoval put out the box set of the Birds and the Bees and the Monkees,
right,
he said, would you write some things and so forth about making of this and that? I said, yeah. I said, under one condition. I said, you make sure that on the release of the CD that you correct that, and he did. And so the CDs, and however, I've seen it since then, in print, and it just says Mike Nesmith, and that's okay.
Did you ever, years later, this is over 50 years later now, did you ever talk one-on-one with Michael about that situation?
No. I never brought it up to him.
Let's talk a little bit about Boyce and Hart. What was your relationship with those guys?
I had met Tommy through Ray Peterson. He's from out here, but Ray met him in New York and recorded a couple of his songs back in during the Corina period and so forth. And when I first started working with him in San Antonio in '62, when I was at university there, he talked about, when that first time I ever met, he talked about, this Tommy Boyce, he's the greatest writer, and young guy. And so I heard so much about him, So we're staying at this motel on Broadway in San Antonio, and we were using it as a base and going out all these other towns in South Texas playing these tours. And we're setting out one evening, right around sundown, and rush hour traffic's going up and down Broadway. And I see this rickety bicycle right in the middle of traffic, people honking and cursing at this guy. And this old bicycle that thing must have been made in the 30s. And the fenders are rattling, and it was the worst looking thing ever. And there's this barefooted guy, disheveled looking, with just a shirt and some jeans on, no shoes or socks, and he's in the middle of this traffic, and he can't ride a bicycle worth a darn. He's wobbling, like a beginner. And I looked up, and for some reason I said, there's Tommy Boyce. And I did know that he was coming to town, but I'd never seen a picture of him, I don't think, And I said, there's Tommy Boyce. And Ray looked up and said, oh, my God. And so he made his way through, and he had been in the company of a woman, the great blue yodeler Jimmy Rogers, his daughter, Anita Court Rogers. And anyway, Tommy said, I'm going out. He was going to come over and meet Ray and so forth over at this motel. And she says, no, you're not. You're going to see another woman. You're going to see. And it exploded like that. And so he said, no, I'm just going to. And so he gotten out of bed, he put on his pants and his shirt, didn't have his shoes on. She reaches in a drawer, pulls out this big revolver, and she's coming after him. And he jumps through the screen window out of the bedroom into the driveway. And there's this old bicycle leaning up against the wall of the house. And he jumps on that and pedals off on that bicycle with her chasing him down the street, in a nightgown and a revolver. And so he went from her place, and then he came to us. So that's how I met Tommy Boyce.
What I learned, Bobby Hart was the previous guest on the Monkees' What I learned about them that I really didn't know was that what a dichotomy of personalities they were. They were two complete opposites.
Yeah, the difference is night and day. That was part of their magic. Tommy's mind was going like that all the time. Hey, we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. And Bobby had the knack of picking the good stuff and reeling him in. And so Bobby was under contract to someone in New York, to Teddy Rendazzo's company, I believe, and so it was going to be a while before he could come out here. So Tommy came out here and he wrote with Steve Vinay until Bobby got here. But they had made a pact that as soon as Bobby was free of his other contract, that they would become a team. And Tommy helped get him signed to Screen Gems, so they were partners, right?
As a member of Paul Revere and the Raiders, you were a cast regular on the Happening 68-69 program. And the Monkees were guests on that in 1969 after Peter Tork left. What can you tell me about that?
Rosalind Ross, the executive producer for Dick Clark Productions, she called me. She said, "Keith, we're trying to book the Monkees on the show, and we're getting the runaround. They don't seem to have no agent can give us an answer. No, their manager, I don't know whether David Pearl was helping take care of them or what. He managed them for a while after Peter left. And so they said, we know you have a personal relationship with them. Can you do anything about it? We want them on the show." I said, all I can do is try, So I guess I called Davey first. I said, "Davey, the show Happening we're on and so forth, so on Saturday morning, I want you guys to be guests. Are you in? Can I get you in so I can use your name and get the other ones?" And he said, "Sure, okay." And I gave him the date. It would be Saturday morning. You don't have to get up early. You don't have to dress up, Just come in about 11 o'clock in the morning, and whatever they're doing, they'll stop and shoot your segment right then. You don't have to sit around all day waiting for the... And so I then called Mickey. He said, "Okay." I said, "Here's the date." So then I called Mike, and I said, "Mickey and Davey both have agreed, because he was usually the harder one to convince to do so." So I had the other two. So that morning they said, "Do you think they're coming?" I said, "I have no idea." I said, "I called them. They said they were coming, but I have no idea. They'll either show up or they won't, Lo and behold, about 10:30, they all showed up, So, and I'm telling you, man, production gave me a great big bottle of champagne as a thank you. They said, "God, you pulled it off." I said, "I just made a few phone calls, but I didn't know whether they'd do it or not, Do
you have any memories of that, filming that show?
They do the intros, Paul and Mark do, and then our guests today are the Monkees, and that's great. And we cut the commercial, and they come back out of commercial, and the announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Revere and the Raiders." So we go into one of our songs, a song that Mark and I actually wrote, "Time After Time," and we're playing it, lip syncing it like you do on the show, and all of a sudden Mickey comes through the set, and he just kind of is like wandering through in front of us, and then they all start coming and going, and they're picking up props, and so no one told them what to do. They just automatically just started doing that, and the part of it was none of that was choreographed, none of it.
They were
It was
just being monkeys.
yeah, we were just doing our song and standing there and playing, singing the song, and they came out, and it just went from there, went to madness, I wouldn't talk to them. The only thing I would said to them was count off the tunes, and 1, 2, a 1, 2, I did not speak to them the rest of the tour on stage, off stage, or anything. I was seething, man.